Botswana President Mogwetsi Masisi is reportedly mooning a proposal to allow Botswana and Zimbabweans to use national identity cards for travel between the two countries. Currently, citizens from both countries require valid passports to cross the border. Masisi revealed that it will make the proposal over the use of ID cards for cross-border travel when it meets his Zimbabwe counterpart, President Emmerson Mnangagwa. In February this year, Masisi and Namibian President Hage Geingob signed a memorandum of understanding to permit citizens of the two countries to use IDs to cross borders. Now, joining me on the news to discuss this issue is the founder of African Prosperity Fund, Yavi Madurai. Good afternoon to you, Yavi, and it's nice to have you join us on the news.
Hi, good afternoon to you. Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, the use of ID cards in Southern African countries seem to be gathering momentum as we speak, with Botswana president pushing for this particular initiative, being the first person to actually push the initiative. Now, it started with Namibia and now Zimbabwe. How will this benefit both countries in terms of trade and free movement?
Yeah, no, sure. So you will find that this has become a bit of a trend, I would say, in the last couple of months. Let's give it about 6 to 8 months. We would have seen a couple of these decisions having been made. You would have seen, so for now, you are talking about Botswana, Zimbabwe, Namibia. A couple of months ago, we had South Africa and Kenya and Uganda. And then this week, it has been Botswana, Namibia, and Zimbabwe. So there is this shift and there is this movement, but this is not something that is happening now and out of nowhere. It's technically been happening across the continent, or it should have been happening across the continent from before the AfCFTA came into being. The African Union declared the Free Movement Protocol back in 2018. And while there was huge ratification and signatories for the AfCFTA, the FMP, or the Free Movement Protocol, didn't obviously get as many signatures and ratification. For now, only 4 countries have ratified. And the trend is now to be able to try and open up the borders with your immediate neighbors. This obviously creates a lot of potential problems, and there could be potential issues that most countries see. However, and I know what you're going to be asking me in terms of the next one, because I can anticipate it. But yeah, for now, let's just end my answer to this particular question on the basis that the Free Movement Protocol exists under the guises of the African Union. And in line with the AfCFTA, we have to start looking at the Free Movement Protocol.
All right, well, some may actually argue that this move will see an influx of Zimbabweans to Botswana, probably vice versa, considering the fact that the country is going through economic and unemployment challenges. But then, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think there could be a scare or porosity in this movement as we speak, and could be detrimental for one as against the other?
Sure. So as I was saying, I kind of knew what was coming, just because that is obviously the first question that comes about the moment we start talking free movement across the continent. There's 2 things about this. So I'm going to answer your question in a roundabout kind of way, just to give context, but I promise I'll be quick. The first is that the Free Movement Protocol, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, has been named incorrectly. There's no such thing as free. So yes, even though it's a matter of IDs and not necessarily passports, you still have to go through a process of being able to cross the border. Whatever those processes are that the likes of Botswana or Namibia or Zimbabwe have put in place for citizens to move across the border. So it's not going to be as easy as we are kind of envisioning, I'm going to flash my ID card and I'm just going to walk through. There's going to be other processes that attach to it. So it's not necessarily as free as, kind of perceptive or perceptive responses allow for it. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the idea of free movement, or the idea of the free movement protocol, so just out of interest, the European Union, when they created the European Union, and Africa was more divided than ever, they called it the four freedoms, as opposed to seeing it as something that hindered or created a problem. So when we think about free movement, this is about how are we able to create cross-border trade opportunities? How are we able to let people go in and find jobs across the border? How are we able to grow economies? How are we able to drive growth on the continent in terms of intra-Africa trade, as opposed to exports and imports into the continent from beyond the continent's borders? So from my perspective, yes, there is always the potential that there's an influx from a country that is, maybe seen as lesser than your own, but from the perspective of, there will be processes at the border, there will be policies and documentation and adherences to those policies and processes. It's not just going to be, as free as we think it is.
So then, as a Pan-Africanist, what kind of Africa are you looking towards or looking forward to? Because there have been calls also for borderless Africa. You've mentioned it in your response. And also, is this viable, looking at the political and economic dynamics that many African countries are actually exhibiting as we see now?
Absolutely. So yes, I'm a very proud Pan-Africanist. It's one of the biggest things that I think we all need to be looking at in terms of, if you are born on this continent, be proudly born continental, but also look at what the future of Africa looks like. And when we look at the future of Africa, 25% of the global workforce by the year 2030 is going to be from the continent, not the diaspora, from the continent. That means we have a responsibility to be able to start allowing the continent to thrive and to grow, irrespective of our past, irrespective of our issues, irrespective of all the drama that plays out on the continent on a daily basis. And to come to the end of this is to say to you is that the things that I am looking forward to is not, when we say borderless, we still mean that there's got to be movement based on adherence to policies, processes, and requirements. There has to be risk factors that are built into it. You can't have criminals running around from one end of the continent to the other, for example. We need to be able to have a borderless continent for the perspective of trade and economic growth to thrive. However, we will also need to have security aspects in place. We need to have processes and policies so that there are capacity building in terms of how we allow that free movement to take place and how we do it in a responsible and an accountable way. So for me, it's about how do we create economic growth and economic development for that benefit, while making sure that we protect our people, we protect our citizens from any issues of maybe security or those kinds of aspects that can play out across the continent.
All right. Well said. Thank you so much, Yavi, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.